What this woman did still leaves locals speechless. 65 years later, do you dare to uncover the truth with me? In the small town of Goobersville, Indiana, in the year 1957, a chilling incident unfolded. Karen Noodleman, a 16-year-old girl with a haunting past, resided in an insane asylum known for causing the tragic loss of her family members. She was deemed dangerous after a lobotomy gone wrong when she was just 13. One eerie night during the routine morning roll count, Karen was nowhere to be found, and her cell panic ensued as the asylum doctors discovered a hidden hole behind her Marilyn Monroe poster. The entire facility went on high alert, and the police were immediately notified. Concern for the safety of Karen's remaining family members grew, particularly her younger brother, who was living with their grandparents. Multiple attempts to reach out to her grandparents went unanswered, deepening the sense of unease among the asylum staff and law enforcement. With a sense of urgency, the authorities rushed to Karen's grandparents' home. They pounded on the front door, yelling police, uncertain of what they would find inside. Someone finally opened the door, but it wasn't who they expected.
Shout out to all of those TikTok videos that talk about if you're walking in the woods in Appalachia and you hear something or you see something, no you didn't, because I think that just saved my life last night. Story time. Excuse the garage. I'm at my parents' place, and this is the only place my dog is allowed, who plays a crucial role in this story, by the way. He's a very, very good boy, and last night proved it. So, my parents don't live in Appalachia, but they do live in an area that's a little more secluded. It's still a suburb, but it's pressed up against these hills with lots of untouched wilderness, and coyotes are running through there all the time. It's just a little bit more rural. So I'm sitting in their backyard, which has this tall fence all the way around it, and the wilderness comes right up to that fence. I'm sitting there around the campfire. My dog is laying beside me. I got my laptop open and I'm writing my little stories. Suddenly, my dog lifts his head, stares straight ahead at the fire, doesn't even look around at the yard, stares straight ahead at the fire and starts to growl. All dog owners know that your dog has different types of barks and growls. This was his warning growl. This is the growl he does when there is danger coming and he's telling it to back away. So immediately I'm like, buddy, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And then I hear a voice at the fence line. And it's not just any voice. It's the voice of a little girl. And it sounds like a creepy doll from a horror movie. It's got that kind of mechanical quality to it. And it's kind of muffled and garbled. I'm still getting the heebie-jeebies. And all it does is go, hello? Just like that. Just like that. Hi, just same tone and everything. Now, mind you, it's midnight. There are not going to be any little girls wandering the woods at midnight. So immediately I was like, well, this is either someone who's gonna me, or it's something else. And what made me think it was something else was the fact that the voice said again, hello? Only this time it had moved and it had gotten closer and I'd heard no footsteps. It was just floating closer. And then, mind you, my dog is still growling this entire time. For the next 5 minutes, that voice is just circling the fence line, going, hello, hi, hello, hey. Just like that, creepy doll voice floating around the fence line. And then suddenly my dog stopped growling, and he put his head down and he went back to sleep, and the voice stopped. I thought, okay, cool, that was weird. And then all of a sudden he lifted his head back up again and started growling. And then the sound of a ticking clock came from the bush directly across from me. Again, heard no footsteps, heard no rustling, just a ticking clock started in the middle of the night, in the middle of the woods. So don't know what that was. But if anyone wants to hop in the comments and let me know, that'd be great. Because I can't wait to go home today. And I don't see myself coming back here anytime soon. And a big shout out to my protector. Yes, big scary boy.
Watch this video real quick.
Okay, so parents have some concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room?
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
A human head and hands.
So that was a video of Brian Cohey after his mother found, like he said in the video, a human head and hands hidden in his room. At the time, Brian was 19 years old, and he unalived and then took apart a 69-year-old homeless man named Warren Barnes. He attacked Warren while he was sleeping under a bridge and attempted to hide some of the parts in the nearby river, but kept his head and hands for himself. Brian went to trial, and he, of course, tried the insanity plea. That did not work in his favor, and after a trial, he was convicted of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. It only took the jury about 2 days to deliberate this.
Whatever you do, don't pull over at night. Last night I was driving home from a family reunion, and it was pretty late. The drive back was about 2 hours long. Most of the drive was on roads with dense bushes and tall trees on either side. You know, the real creepy ones you see in a lot of movies. Yeah, I know. I should have known. But anyways, I had been driving for about 45 minutes, and I started getting really tired. You know how it goes. The big yawns, and then the droopy eyes. I knew I wasn't going to last, but I tried to push through, I swear, for as long as I could, which honestly was only for another 15 minutes. That's when I started swerving, and I knew I had to pull over to at least take a power nap so I wouldn't be a danger to myself and to others while on the road. The road I was driving on wasn't necessarily completely empty. Like, I would see a car go by every 20 minutes or so I wasn't completely alone. I don't know if that made me feel better or worse about pulling over, but all I knew was that I needed to. So that's what I did. I pulled over to the side of the road, onto the grass, next to what appeared to be an endless sight of tall trees. Honestly, it was so relaxing, seeing the moonlight seep through the cracks. I locked my car, reclined my seat, and before I dozed off, I made a mental note of the time. 11:57. Then off to sleep I went. Sometime later, I was awoken by, I want to say, a moaning sound of some sort. I don't really know, and I don't know where it was coming from, but I opened my eyes right away, and I locked my eyes on the radio clock, which read 12:35 a.m. As soon as my eyes adjusted, the sound stopped. Something still felt off, though, but I was extremely tired, and my car was locked, and I was safe from animals. I should have trusted my gut looking back. I should have just left then and there, but I was tired. I fell back asleep. Then later on, I was awoken by the same sound, except this time, I knew exactly where it was coming from. It was louder than before, and it was coming from the back of my car right under the trunk. I shot up right away, and I looked at the time, adjusting my eyes. It was 1:56 a.m. It was so late, I thought. I tried to look at the rearview window, but it was foggy. All my windows were foggy. My heart was pounding at this point, and I was so confused. The moan grew louder, and I wasn't going to stick around to find out. So I quickly took out my keys, but my adrenaline caused me to fumble. I let out a little yelp. Shit, 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 shit. Whatever was moaning heard me and stopped, and now knew I was finally awake, and so it began to climb on the roof of my car. I caught a glimpse of its back legs through my foggy window as it climbed onto my roof, indenting my car roof on its way towards my hood. I turned on my car and I floored it, and I got the hell out of there. Hearing whatever was on my roof flew off, and on its way off let out an angry sort of growl. I was probably going 100 down the road. I rolled down my windows to defog, and that's when I saw a car with its hazard lights pulled over to the side. It was probably like, I want to say 2 miles ahead of where I was initially stopped. I see the driver's side fully ajar, causing the car's interior lights to illuminate the whole inside of the car. It was completely empty. I slowed down a bit, but I wasn't going to fully stop. I wasn't stupid, not after exactly what I had just experienced. That's when I heard the most terrifying sound.
a woman screamed, and I know what you're thinking. Oh gosh, that's the most terrifying sound. But this wasn't no normal scream. This wasn't something you hear in horror movies. No, this was real. This was a scream filled with pain. I could feel her pain. The scream was so loud that it caused me to scream, and I accidentally slammed on my brakes, causing my car to screech and stopping in the middle of the road right ahead of the abandoned car. Her screams only lasted for about 7 seconds, as they then started to be muffled by the sounds of bones crackling. I looked at my rearview mirror and I saw a tall figure, probably 7 feet tall, crunched over with long arms and its head tilted to the side, coming out from the woods, and it stopped in the middle of the road. Startled by what I saw, I think I was in shock, and I froze for a few seconds. And then it started sprinting towards me, and I think my body took over, and I floored it once more. And this time I did not slow down. I didn't even stop for any red lights on the way home. I made it home way faster than ever. This morning I walked outside and I found large indents on the roof of my car. And right on the back of my car, right on the bumper of the trunk, was written in dust as someone traced or their fingers or something in the dirt. Wake up, and wake up. I've been checking the news to see if anyone's gone missing or if anything involving what happened last night has been reported, but nothing yet. Did I dream the whole thing? Was it all a panic? I don't know. How do I explain the indents on my car? What happened? All I know is, whatever you do, don't pull over at night. Good night.
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
A human head and hands.
Do you have anything on you that's going to cut, poke, hurt, stick me anything without reaching for nothing? Don't reach for nothing.
My phone and my wallet, that's
okay.
it.
Well, I'm going to have you face that way. Put your hands on top of your head for me real quick. I just want to make sure you interlace your fingers for me real quick, all right?
It's important that the deputy only ask enough questions to figure out exactly what is going on at the scene. And while this is not the kind of encounter that even a veteran police officer would be accustomed to, it's Brian's parents who must slowly absorb the shock of their son's admission.
I'm going to have you walk over here. You're going to sit in the back of my partner's patrol car for a minute, okay? Not yet. Okay. Just sit back there and hang out for me, okay? Can you walk me inside, please?
Let's walk you all through this, what happened in the beginning.
Okay.
Let me do it. You go inside.
Well, let's stay out here with me for a minute.
Sit down. Come on, sit down, baby.
Can I go in there and verify here first?
Oh, yeah, please. We haven't seen it. Yeah, we haven't
Okay.
looked at it. It's under the towel in the sink.
Okay.
Yeah, Annie, stay with your mother. Give her a...
Hey, just make sure that guy goes in the car first.
I can stay here. You can go in the sink, right?
Well, yeah,
Sink
okay.
right there. No, you can on your own.
Yeah.
House is empty.
Okay.
I had a bad feeling about what happened this weekend.
Okay.
And she said there's a bag in this closet, and she opened it up, and she called me and said, get over here right now.
The deputy correctly asks for permission to enter the house so that he can confirm the grim contents of the kitchen sink.
I covered it with a towel.
Okay.
I didn't want him to see it because we didn't want him to run. I don't want to look at it.
Yep. Just sit back there and hang out for me, okay?
How are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you? You said your name's Brian?
Yeah. I'm not feeling too well.
You're not feeling too well? All right.
No, these past few days I've been very, very anxious.
That's understandable. So what we're going to have you do here is I'm just going to have you sit in the back here, okay? I'm going to turn on the air for you in a second. That way you're not too hot. Are you a hot-blooded or cold-blooded kind of guy?
I am very cold-blooded. I prefer cold. Well, no, actually, sorry. Hot.
This is the spoon video, one of the hardest videos to watch explained. The video I'm about to explain is a pretty quick one and it's about 27 seconds long. But just because it's short doesn't mean it's not disturbing. The video opens up with two guys sitting on the floor. The one has a white shirt and the other has a blue shirt. The victims have their hands tied behind their back, and one of the men then come up to the victim in the white shirt and begins to cut off every one of his fingers one by one with hedge clippers. The victim is taking it extremely well also, not screaming or making any noise whatsoever. You then begin to see a big puddle of blood behind the victim's back where his hands are. But the victim in the blue shirt is getting it far, far worse. And this is where it gets disturbing. At the start, you see the victim in the blue being held by one of the men by his hair, and you can see something has obviously been done to his eyes. Where his eyes are, it's completely covered in blood, and it actually looks like he's crying blood instead of tears, which makes this video even more unsettling. In the beginning of the video, you see the man drop a knife, so they might have stabbed the victim in the eyes first, and as the video goes on, you see the man get a spoon, and he then digs it into the victim's eye socket, trying to remove his eye. He starts with the victim's right eye, and he then digs the spoon in and pulls it out. You can see the eye of the victim wanting to pop out, but I don't know if it does come out because the quality is pretty bad. But one thing is for sure, this victim is never going to see again. After the man keeps digging the spoon into the victim's eyes, the video then concludes. But the worst part about this whole video is that they let these victims live. And who knows what else they did to these guys. Some sources even say that the cartel made them fight after the video. This is absolutely brutal, and can you imagine getting tortured and having your eyes ripped out, and that being the last thing you ever see in your life? He probably replays this whole situation in his head on repeat, and his PTSD has to be insane. Never go searching for this video because it's definitely one of the hardest watches, and luckily it's extremely hard to find.
Trigger warning on today's case, the victim is a 13-month-old baby. It is probably now the hardest case I have ever had to research, and I have also covered Gabriel Fernandez. This is Amora Carson. She was tormented to death during an exorcism by her mother's boyfriend. The adults in question were 18-year-old Jessica Carson and Blaine Milam. A little about these two. Blaine has a history of drug use and was withdrawn from school in 4th grade. His defense team later tries to say that mentally he is 12 years old. He was also a registered sex offender because he snuck into the room of an 11-year-old and had left clippings from adult magazines with notes saying he wanted to meet this child and do the things in the pictures with them. He was given criminal solicitation and 180 days in jail. He was given a work release program and he only served 48 days. And if you're not clear what that is, basically in one of the documentaries I watched on this, they said he could leave for work and then had to come back, but one day he just never came back. He moved to a new county where nobody knew who he was, so this puts us at January of 2008. And he had met Jessica, like I said, is also 18 years old at this time. She was still in high school and already had baby Amora. When they first started talking, she was worried that Blaine wouldn't like her because of the baby. But it was said that the exact opposite happened, that he loved both of them. And on prom night, he proposed to Jessica to get married. And this is when Jessica and Amora moved in with him. They would live together almost a year, and the apartment was described as filthy and disgusting. Flash forward to December 2nd, 2008. Blaine was on the phone first and telling the dispatcher that he had found his daughter dead. And flash forward, then Jessica gets on the phone, and the dispatcher is being extremely urgent, trying to encourage her to perform CPR to see if there's any way they could revive Amora. And basically, she is saying that she can't, so authorities are of course sent over to the house. Authorities would say that they saw a bunch of blood all over a room that they said this is where she must have been killed. Blaine was cooperative with the police and told them they could go ahead and search however much they wanted. So of course they took this blood and items, but later it would turn out that this was fake blood. So this first crime scene was staged. They then went into another bedroom where they would find blood all over the room, all over the bedding, all over baby clothes. That would be tested and it would be confirmed to be baby Amora's blood. They would also find blood-soaked wipes and a pair of jeans that had blood all over the lap, and a tube of Astroglide lubricant. Immediately, Jessica and Blaine were questioned, and they did have conflicting stories. One story was basically that they went up the road to look at some property because they wanted to move the trailer there, that they lost track of time and found the baby dead. And while they had lost track of time, they were gone for an hour and a half. Blaine was saying something similar, but then they were saying like we were looking at apartments and things like that. But when they saw Amora's body and also the differences voices in these stories, they separated the two because they knew there was more to it. Again, trigger warning, this part is horrific. I'm going to run through the injuries she had. Forensic evidence showed that the child was beaten so severely that the multitude of fractures to her skull connected with each other just like a jigsaw puzzle, and her brain was torn and severely damaged. An arm and a leg had spiral fractures indicating they were twisted in two. Her torso was either struck by a blunt object or squeezed until the ribs and sternum broke, and her body, including her neck, chest, abdomen, buttocks, both elbows, both forearms, both feet, right arm, left shoulder, left upper arm, left hand, right thigh, and left knee, were riddled with no less than 24 distinct bite marks. And it was so deep, the bite marks, that you could see clear dental indentations. Her head and face were so scraped and bruised that all the discrete injuries combined into one giant injury. Her liver was torn, and her private area to her backside were torn so bad that it was actually connected. And she was also strangled. It was also noted that the underside of her tongue was lacerated from blunt force trauma. Many experts said this is the worst case they have ever seen, and because of the severity of each of her injuries, there was no way to tell which one was the cause of death. Also, when authorities reached her, her body was stiff and in rigor, so this suggested she wasn't found shortly after her death. They had called quite a bit after. So they eventually find out that they were essentially running errands around the time they said they were supposed to be looking at a property. They are seen at a pawn shop and then also a gas station, and neither of them seemed distressed. Also comes out that Blaine had called his sister and said that Amora was dead at 9:30, so about an hour or so before they called 911. This would turn into a lot of he said, she said, and putting blame on the other once they were in custody and separated. On December 13th, it would come out that Blaine had contacted a family member saying that they needed to go back to the trailer to go to the crawl space because there was evidence under there. So of course authorities get a search warrant and they find a pipe wrench in a bag. Forensics did analyze this, and it revealed that there was components of Astroglide on the pipe wrench, the diaper that Amora had been wearing, and the diaper and wipes collected from the south bedroom. The further this goes along, the more they start talking. They say they were at the pawn shop because they were pawning off Blaine's chainsaw to get money for an exorcism, because they believed that baby Amora was possessed. They stated that they had been playing with the Ouija board for 8 hours trying to contact both of their fathers who had passed away. They said they thought it was a telephone to heaven. Jessica said she spoke with the devil, who said that baby Amora was possessed and that he was also going to take Blaine's soul. And they would say that God told them it was too late. That if baby Amora's life didn't end right there, it would belong to the devil for eternity. And according to Jessica, she wanted to go to a priest to get some help. But Blaine said no, it was too late for that, that if she doesn't go to heaven now, she'll live here her life with Satan having her. So it was Blaine that was responsible for all these horrible things to Amora. And all but one bite mark matched up to him, the other one matching up to Jessica. During trial, it is brought up about his mental capacity and also the fact that Jessica possibly had postpartum psychosis. They both would be found guilty. Jessica would be given life without the possibility of parole, and Blaine was put on death row. He was scheduled to be executed January 21st of this year, but literally the day before he was given a stay of execution. His defense had went into this saying that the state's reliance on the bite mark testimony was a key part in his trial, and that the science has largely been discredited. They also talked of his intellectual disability. Like I said, he is said to be mentally 12 years old, so he is still alive at the Huntsville State Penitentiary in Huntsville, Texas.
I remember that night well. It was a cold, windy night in our tough neighborhood. My name is Mary, and I was just 12 years old then. I lived with my mom and my little brother Tommy. Dad was away for work, like he often was, and we were used to handling things ourselves. But this night was different. It was very late, maybe around midnight. The wind howled outside, and the trees cast spooky shadows on the walls. Tommy and I were already in bed, but I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, when suddenly I heard a noise. It was a soft knock on the front door. At first, I thought I imagined it, but then I heard it again. My heart started to race. Who could it be at this hour? I crept out of bed and peeked down the hallway. I saw Mom standing still, listening. She looked worried. "Stay in your room, Mary," she whispered when she saw me. But I couldn't move. I watched as helped to the closet and pulled out Dad's old shotgun. My mom had never looked so scared. She held the gun tightly and strolled to the door. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice shaking. There was no answer, just more knocking. She looked through the peephole but saw nothing. Mom took a deep breath and opened the door just a crack. There was no one there. She shut the door quickly and locked it, her hands trembling. "Go back to bed, Mary," she said. But I could tell she was scared too. I went back to my room, but I didn't sleep. I stayed awake, listening to every sound. The next morning, we saw something strange outside. There were footprints in the dirt near our house. They were big, like a man's, but they were odd, like he had been dragging something heavy. We also found barbed wire tangled in the bushes near our front yard. It was rusty and sharp, and it made me shiver. Mom called the police, and they came to our house. They looked at the footprints and the barbed wire and took pictures. The police officers talked to Mom for a long time. I could tell they were worried too. They told us to be careful and to keep the doors and windows locked. We thought about what happened all day. Tommy didn't understand much, but he knew something was wrong. He stayed close to Mom and me, his little hand holding mine tightly. That night, we didn't sleep much. Every sound made us jump. A few days later, we learned something that made things even scarier. We had a neighbor who lived a few houses down. He was an old man named Mr. David. He always seemed a bit strange, but we didn't think much of it. But then, one of our other neighbors told us something that made my blood run cold. "Mr. David has been acting red lately," Mrs. Peters said. "I saw him walking around at night, carrying something big and heavy. He didn't look right." Mom thanked her and hurried us inside. She looked more worried than ever. "We need to be careful," she said. "Stay close and don't go outside alone." We started noticing more strange things. Sometimes we would hear noises outside at night, like someone walking around our house. Once, Tommy found a weird old doll in our backyard. It was dirty and broken, and it made me feel sick to look at it. Mom called Dad and told him everything. He said he would come home as soon as he could, but it would be a few more days before he could get back. We had to stay safe until then. One night, I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. I jumped out of bed and ran to Mom's room. She was already up, holding the shotgun. "Stay behind me," she said. We walked slowly to the living room, where the sound came from. The window was broken, and the cold wind blew in. Mom pointed the shotgun at the broken window, her hands shaking. "Who's there?" she called out. There was no answer. We heard footsteps running away, and then it was quiet. Mom called the police again, and they came quickly. They searched around the house, but didn't find anyone. "We need to leave," Mom said after the police left. "It's not safe here." We packed our things quickly. Mom called Dad and told him what happened. He agreed we should leave. We went to stay with my aunt and uncle for a while. It felt safer there, but I still had nightmares about that night. A few days later, Dad finally came home. He hugged us tightly, and I felt safe for the first time in days. He talked to the police and David. The police found out that Mr. David had been sneaking around our house. He had a history of troubling behavior, and they took him in for questioning. We never went back to that house. We moved to a new neighborhood, far away from Mr. David and the scary nights. It took a long time for us to feel safe again, but we were together, and that was what mattered. I still think about that night sometimes. The knock on the door, the footprints, the barbed wire, it all feels like a bad dream, but it taught me to be brave and to trust my family. No matter what, we would always protect each other.
This girl got cut into 2,000 pieces, and this is a massive trigger warning. On January 19th, 1996, the mutilated remains of Diao Aquing, who disappeared 9 days prior, were found across multiple locations in China. Her body had been dismembered into over 2,000 pieces. The case remains unsolved, and it's one of the most notorious crimes in Chinese history. On January 10th, 1996 in the evening, Diao and her college roommate were punished for the illegal use of an electric appliance. After a conflict with the dormitory management, she left the building and did not return. Diao was last seen alive wearing a red coat with a black lining. She was reported missing, but her family was not notified by the authorities until January 19th. The discovery of Diao's remains in the winter of January 19th was first reported by a sanitary worker. Initially, he thought it was pork, so he brought it home for food. And while preparing the meat for himself, 3 human fingers were found in it. The worker then reported the discovery to the police and they confirmed they were human fingers. Human remains in plastic-wrapped packages were eventually discovered across 8 locations around the university, including at a stadium, entrance gate, hospital, and along roadsides. The police later confirmed that the scattered remains were of Diao's and informed her father to visit Nanjing. Between January 20th and 30th, Diao's head and clothes were found. More than 2,000 human remains were recovered. Diao's head and internal organs were boiled for several days. Crucial organs including the heart, liver, and spleen were never found. The forensics team was only able to identify the remains as belonging to a female through the analysis of body hair and muscle tissue. Relatives of Diao were able to identify her through a mole on her right cheek. A senior officer involved in the case described the killing as really cruel, which in my opinion is a nice way to put it. The officer also added that the pieces of flesh were dissected with high precision, only achieved by an individual with great understanding of anatomy. Police concluded that the murderer must have been a professional butcher or surgeon. Teachers and students then became the subject of investigation. 2 suspect profiles were brought up, including a single physical fit middle-aged male. However, the university department could not find any individuals that matched the characteristics of the profile. A major investigation was launched in the university and the areas around, but no major clues of the crime were found and the case failed to make any progress. In 2016, Nanjing police told the family of Diao that the case is still under investigation. Okay, so let's talk about this case for a second. If the killer was never found and he had the skill to dissect somebody into 2,000 pieces and never get caught with it, don't you think he might be a serial killer? And if he was, how many more people do you think he murdered after Diao? The dedication and skill, and honestly the obsession to cut somebody into 2,000 pieces and not get caught with it is crazy. This person could be walking around the streets of China today doing the same things to other people that he did to Diao. The thought of that is absolutely disturbing, and may Diao rest in peace.